Hello and welcome to Akumat Online Academy. In this lesson, we want to continue with our discussion on probability, and we are expecting you to learn the following: the probability of a certain event, the probability of an impossible event, and the probability or the connection between the events in a sample space. You should remember that in the previous lesson, we talked about certain events or sure events, and we also talked about impossible events. We explained the meaning of certain events and impossible events. We said that a certain event is an event that we are sure that it will happen, like saying that every man must die or will die is a certain event. Any person born of a woman must one day die, or every living thing must one day die. So it is a certain event or sure event, something that must surely come to pass. So, how do we determine the possibility of a certain event? It is simple. Once you know that any event is certain, we assign the probability of 1 to it. So, saying that man must die means that the probability of man dying is equal to 1. Once you know that something must happen, then its probability is 1. There's no need to calculate anything. So that is the probability of a certain event. An event must happen, the probability of it is 1. So if somebody asks you, what is the probability that you are going to marry tomorrow? If you are sure that you must marry tomorrow, then you tell the person that the probability that I must marry tomorrow is 1. That means that you must marry. That the probability is sure. What is the probability? The probability that rain will come today. If you are sure that rain must fall, then you tell the person that the probability that rain will fall today is 1. If somebody asks you, what is the probability that you will pass an exam? If you are sure that you will pass the exam, then that means that the probability that you will pass is 1. Now let's look at the probability of impossible events. An event that can never happen, an event that we are sure that it will never happen, its probability is 0. So if we are sure that an event will never happen, we assign 0 to it as its probability. For instance, we know that a cow can never give birth to a man. So the probability that a cow will give birth to a man is 0. It can never happen. The probability that a mango tree will produce cashew nuts is 0. It can never happen. So anything that we know that it can never happen, we assign the probability of 0 to it. So if somebody asks you something and you know that it can never happen, you are sure that it can never happen, you tell the person that the probability of it happening is 0. If the person knows probability, the person will understand what you are saying, that it means that that thing can never happen. So that is how to determine the probability of an impossible event. Now we look at the connection between events in a sample space. The connection between events in a sample space. Now this helps us to determine the connection of events in a sample space. We've talked about sample space as all the possible events or outcomes in an event. Now, the probability of an event is always between 0 and 1. That is why probability is always expressed as a fraction. it is never greater than 1. So if somebody is telling you that the probability of something is 2, or after solving, you are given an assignment on probability to solve, and after solving your own, you get something more than 1, then just be sure that you did not get it. A probability can never be more than 1, and a probability can never be less than 0. So it is between 0 and 1. That means that probability can never be negative. If it can never be less than 0, it means that it can never be 0. Anything less than 0 is negative. So since probability is always between 0 and 1, then it means that probability can never be negative. These are basic rules that we must have to solve some advanced calculations on probability. Now, the third one is that the sum of probabilities of an event in a sample space is equal to 1. Now, what this means is this, that once we get all the sample space that we have for an event, if we add all of them together, it is going to give us 1. For instance, when we toss a coin, we will either get the head or the tail. Now, this law is now telling us that when we add the probability of getting the head and the probability of getting the tail, when we add two of them, it will always give us 1. That means that if somebody tells you that the probability of getting the tail in an event or when the coin is tossed, the probability of getting the head is 1/2, then you know that the probability of getting the other one, which is the tail, is equal to 1 minus 1/2, because two of them will give you 1. So you subtract the one you have from 1, then you get the remaining 1. Examples. Now let's look at this example. A bag contains white and black balls only. If the probability of picking a black ball or picking a black ball from the bag is 4/7, what is the probability of picking a white ball? This only. So the bag contains white and black balls only. Now, if the probability of picking a black ball from the bag is 4/7, what is the probability of picking a white ball? Solution. Now, we said that the probability of, in this number 3, that the sum of probability of an event in a sample is equal to 1. Now, we have only black and white balls in the bag. That means that the probability of picking the white one and the probability of picking the black one, two of them, if you combine the two probabilities, you are going to get 1. Now, since we already know that the probability of picking the black one is 4/7, that means that 1 is equal to 4/7 plus the probability of picking the remaining one, which is the white one. Let's call it W. Now, what it now means is that W now is equal to 1 minus 4/7. 1 minus 4/7. Now, that will give us 7 as a denominator. 7 times 1 will give us 7. 7 divided by 7 is 1. 1 times 4 is 4. So this gives us 7 minus 4 is 3 over 7. So this is the answer. So the probability of picking a white ball from the basket is 7 over 3. While the probability of picking the or a black ball is 4 over 7. Now to do your check, when you add 3 over 4 and when you add the two probabilities, it is going to give you 1. So to be sure that you got the right answer, add this one and this one. Two of them is supposed to give you 1. Okay, so that is how to determine the probability of an event when we know one of the probability of getting one of the events. We add two of them and two of them must give us 1. So if you already know one of them, then you subtract it from 1 and it will give you the remaining 1. Example 2. Now, if you have this example, a medical examination shows that the probability that a certain COVID-19 patient will die is 2 over 3. Find the probability that the patient will survive. We are given the probability that somebody will die as 2 over 3. And we are asked for the probability that the person will not die. Now, let's look at our rules again. In these rules, in number 1, we are told that the probability of an event is always between 0 and 1, okay? Then the sum of probability of an event is in a sample space is 1. Okay, let's use that one and solve it. Now solution. Now, somebody that is sick, two things can either happen to the person. The person can either survive it or the person dies. So these are the two things that can happen when somebody is sick. Now, the doctor has already given us the probability that the person will die. So what do? When we combine the probability that the person will die and the probability that the person will survive, two of them will give us 1. Now, since we already know one of them, we subtract it from 1 and we get the probability that the person will survive. So that becomes that the probability that the person will die, we have that 1, which is the total probability, is equal to the probability that the person will die, which is now given to us as 2 over 3, plus the probability that the person will survive. Let's call it S. Now that means that S is equal to 1 minus 2 over 3. And that gives us that S is equal to 3 minus 2, and that gives us 1 over 3. So the probability that the patient will survive is 1 over 3, while the probability that the person will die is 2 over 3. To do a check, if you combine the probability that the person will die and the probability that the person will survive, that is a 1 over 3 plus a 2 over 3. Two of them, that's supposed to give us 1. So this is how to calculate this one also. So in this lesson, we've learned the probability of a certain event, that is an event that is sure, and the probability of an impossible event, that is an event that can never happen. And we've also learned how to combine the probability in a sample space, how to determine the probability of an event in a sample space when we know the probability of one of them. So this is what we have in this lesson, and I believe that everything is very clear. Thank you.